Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dugout Daily. I'm Charlie, once again joined by Dan. Before we get going, if you're new around here, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter, also known as X, at MCFC Hibs. All the links needed are in the description. Today, we're diving into the Champions League last 16 first leg, where it finished Real Madrid 3, Manchester City 0 on Wednesday at the Estadio Bernabeu, as Manchester City face a mammoth task to keep our Champions League ambitions alive after Federico Valverde's first half hat-trick to put Real Madrid firmly in control of this tie. Apart from the result, how are you, Dan, mate?
Yeah, I'm all right, Paul. I'm all right.
Yeah, good to hear. We will get going then straight away. Real Madrid were without key stars like Kylian Mbappe, Jude Bellingham, and long-term absentee Rodrigo due to injuries, as Alvaro Arbeloa delivered a masterclass for Real Madrid, to be honest, mainly due to Uruguayan midfielder and captain Federico Valverde, who tormented Pep Guardiola's side with a display of the highest class as he scored a first half hat-trick. What was your thoughts on Valverde's performance, Dan?
That'll be the easiest performance he'll have all year.
Yeah.
Look, I don't want to go into it too early in the video here, but when you're being put up against a midfield of two players in midfield, two midfielders, there's no way that he doesn't have a good game. Then there's no way he didn't score. I mean, we fell asleep for his goal. One of them was a mistake. One of them was really good. The other one, that was really good as well. Nothing much we could do about that. With the players we had on the pitch, that was. I mean, there's plenty we could have done about it, but yeah, fair play to him. Deserves it.
Yeah, as you can tell, this is going to be a very negative match reaction after Forest a couple of weeks ago as well. It's not the first time. It all started, it says brightly here. I think that's a bit generous for City, as we came out with intent and gave Real some real anxious moments early on, with Jeremy Doku posing a threat down the flank against Alexander-Arnold. But on 20 minutes, it unravelled in dramatic fashion as a long ball from keeper Thibaut Courtois dropped perfectly behind Nico O'Reilly to allow Valverde to latch on around the onrushing Gianluigi Donnarumma and slot home. Who would you blame that goal on City-wise? O'Reilly, Donnarumma, or a bit of both?
Yeah, both of them. Look, you can criticise Donnarumma, but you can't criticise him too heavily. Look, that man is the only reason that we're actually not in a relegation battle this season at times. So, I mean, and obviously O'Reilly, but, that's going to happen. Obviously Donnarumma's new, O'Reilly's kind of new into the setup. He's young, he's inexperienced, etc. Obviously Donnarumma's not used to being a sweeper keeper that he's been asked to do. He's going to miss time a few when it happens. It was a fairly easy goal for them, wasn't it? Open net.
Yeah.
I think Guehi and Diaz probably should be a bit more alive to that. Because there's so many times Newcastle did it. Have done it. Forest did it. All it takes to beat this Man City defence is one long ball, because Pep, for some unknown reason, likes to play his centre back so high up the pitch. And I know it adds numbers for retaining possession up there, but when you've got Diaz, who isn't particularly quick, you're telling Kusanov to basically play on the wing, who's the only defender with pace.
Yeah.
I don't exactly see. It's so easy for teams. You can't go into Arbeloa now and say you've had a tactical masterclass. He's told them to play long ball. It's all it takes. It's one long ball, and you're in 90% of the time against City. And the only time it's not is when we decide to drop Kusanov. Not once even in that second half did we decide to drop the defensive line.
No.
It makes no sense to me. How any of this is working defensively, because it's not. It can work, but he's not doing anything. So
yeah. Could you say it's naive?
Absolutely. You can call it naive, arrogant. You could call it anything, because it is. It's mental. I think that, that is what the definition of insane is. Doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And expecting a different outcome. It's not. Teams aren't stupid. Teams watch us and they just think, all we have to do is put him in behind and he's scored. Because it's not like we learned from that one ball going over the top. Because we still concede the exact same goal either that game or that week. It's so easy for him.
Yeah. 7 minutes later, Valverde doubled the lead as he finished low and clinical across Donnarumma with his weaker left foot. You could say he got a bit lucky with a bounce off Diaz, but to be fair, it was a good finish, weren't it?
Yeah, it was a good goal. And that's a goal that I can definitely live with conceding. I still think defensively we were poor, but you've got to give him credit. That was a very good finish, good moment. Got himself into the position and scored. Fair enough.
Yeah, and then the hat-trick was completed before the break as a lofted through ball from former City player Brahim Diaz found Valverde in a tight space. He showed invention to lift the ball over Mark Guehi before volleying past Donnarumma. It, again, was another good goal, weren't it?
Yeah, no real complaints. And there's nothing much that we could have really done about that goal in particular. That one was one where you just got to hold your hands up and say, look, they are. That was very good football from a very good team, and pick yourself up. Yeah,
definitely. And then the second half saw more drama as City pushed forward but were vulnerable at the back. Real were awarded a penalty around the hour mark after Donnarumma fouled Vinicius Jr. in the box. Vinicius stepped up himself, but his casual effort was saved by Donnarumma diving to his left in what could turn out to be potentially a big moment in this tie. Do you think that could be the case?
Yeah, it could, because theoretically we go into that an early goal and we've still got a chance.
Yeah.
But 4-0, that should really be tied done. That should be tied done, and there's no real complaints about that. Again, as I mentioned previously, one long ball. That's all it took. One ball in the air, over the top, straight there. It's a penalty. That's all you have to do against City, and that's all they did. It's not, and they do it every year, and we keep falling into the same trap.
Yeah. In my opinion, that was the worst of the lot. We had a corner. For some reason, only Kushinov is the only person on the halfway line. What did they do? They put Vinicius up there, who, of course, is probably slightly slower than Kushinov, but it's close. Definitely. Say you put anyone else there, Vinicius is blistering past them in a second. It's just basics. You're taught, even when you're like 13 years old, you leave an extra man back. You never leave a one-on-one. It's mind-boggling to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Look, his tactics tonight were completely wrong. From start to finish, I think everything about his game plan, his selection, even his bloody substitutions were just completely ridiculous. I'm sure we'll get onto that later, but it was just it's a night that you could accept, but that wasn't acceptable in the situation that we're in. It's not exactly like we're trying to push for the league fully at the minute. We're still sort of banking on Arsenal to drop points. There was no excuse to take your foot off the gas away at Real Madrid in a knockout Champions League game. That's a very, very, very silly thing to do, and it's not the first time we've done it.
Well, we'll look at our subs now. At half-time, he brought Savinho off for Reinders. Reinders went into midfield. It was a slight change of shape. I thought Bernardo would go deeper, potentially next to Roger. That never happened. So it didn't solve the issues we actually had in being overrun in midfield. On 70 minutes, he took off Bernardo, who was another midfielder for Aït-Nouri. Nico O'Reilly pushed up into midfield. And Semenyo, who's probably our second biggest goal threat after Haaland when we need a goal as well. Of course, it was a poor performance from him tonight, but it's a poor performance from everyone. And 82 minutes had gone by the time he brought Marmoush on for Haaland. Haaland had 10 touches all night, 1 touch in the box. Marmoush coming off 2 goals at the weekend. I'd be fuming if I was Marmoush, to be honest. I'd be wanting at least 20 minutes, 25, half an hour. He's probably one of our best goal scorers, especially when we're 3-0 down chasing a game. He should be on the pitch a lot earlier. I don't know if you agree with that.
I completely agree. Look, if I was Marmoush, I'd probably be on the phone to the agent right now saying, get me out of this club because it's ruining him. What more does he have to do? I mean, unless he changes his name to Savinho and gets a Brazilian passport, he ain't playing. And this is the thing. And, I mean, the substitutions were laughable, really. Look, Pep screwed up massively, and I personally think that it's Pep's love for Savinho that has cost us tonight. Because the way that you try and shoehorn him into that team, yes, he scored probably the worst goal I've ever seen on Saturday and did all right. Yeah. Fair enough. I called it. I knew that he played.
Yeah, you did.
And I don't get it because you've got Cherky there who was probably man of the match against Leeds. Man of the match the game before that, and he was the only one really who recently looked like he can go forward and do things. And yet he still hasn't been given an opportunity to start recently. But Savinho arrives back from injury and the ball pings off his foot and went into the net against Newcastle, and he starts immediately. And not just starts, he was shoehorned into that team. Because Pep going in there with three wingers was just completely idiotic of him. And trying to play Semenyo in it, I just don't get it. And I mean, for Haaland to stay on the pitch for that long, going back to the subs, I mean, I just don't understand it. He was clearly out of the game. He looked so disinterested at the minute, and he really, really, really has to start picking up soon. Because let's be honest, he's on $1 million a week at this point, and we're paying him $1 million a week at the minute to film with sidemen in the CFA, and that's not a big deal, but let's just come on, like business end of the season, and we're walking into games knowing that he's not going to score, and we've got Marmoush on the bench who is in fairly decent form at the minute. What more could he do? What more can Cherky do to start? This is the thing, and to bring them on so late and 3-0 down, theoretically at 2-0 when it didn't improve after 5 minutes, he should be making the changes then. I don't care about player morale anymore at that point, because we were just sitting ducks. We were there, for the taking, and they did. They killed the game, and all they had to do then for the second half, even if we showed any ounce of urgency, which we never do in the second half, is sit back and defend, and they go to the Etihad and have to do the exact same thing. And if they weather that first 20 minutes, that is tied done, and they know that. We didn't even lay a glove on them until Marmoush came on in the 88th minute. I think, when we had was it a free kick that he put on target? Yeah, fair enough. That was probably the only chance that I looked at. I think O'Reilly had a chance in the first half. Apart from that, absolutely shocking, diabolical from everyone, really.
Yeah, I'd say looking back at the subs, we've mentioned about Marmoush's minutes. You mentioned about Cherky as well. When he came on, he looked like the only one who was trying stuff. Him and Doku were linking up a bit. Doku held on to it at times a lot longer than he should have done. And if you look at Cherky's minutes recently, after his man of the match performance against Leeds, he came on late at the weekend at Newcastle. He's not been playing much at all. At Newcastle, he played 11 minutes, played 80 minutes in the draw against Forest, and played basically the full game against Leeds after getting an assist in the Forest game. I understand why you don't play him in the FA Cup. Well, he played 10 minutes, but why not come on earlier than play 20 minutes in this one? And it seems like it's the same thing week in, week out, every game. The subs don't make any sense. I don't know if that's just to me or if that's to everyone. It's like Pep's watching a different game to me at times. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
yeah. Well, look, I think I've agreed with you on this for a while now. I think it's all getting very confusing with Pep at the minute. And look, I don't want to start having these uncomfortable conversations, which a lot of people are having tonight, especially. But I think at the minute he's really got to come out and do something now, because I can't put my finger on what he's thinking. Normally we can see through a bit of his thinking, or his thinking's that good that that we sort of clock onto it. But at the minute, his obsession with Savinho. I mean, Savinho right now probably should be left in Spain, and that's that.
That's generous.
Constantly playing him is ridiculous for the first start. But Cherky's probably he probably could be up there with our contender for Player of the Season. He is that creative spark when Haaland is out of form, which he is. You either look to Semenyo, who again probably wouldn't have been his night tonight with it being his first Champions League game away at Real Madrid. Look,
it's a big ass, that, isn't
it? Psychologically, yes, he's there, but come on, you've got to have a bit of sense there. So that's where Cherky comes in. Put Cherky in there. He's been terrible recently, but even for the dynamic of the team, put Foden in there. Somebody who's done it before there, just to make the team a bit more balanced. Because you look at that midfield. You had three wingers who were constantly trying to get out onto each other's sides all over the place, which then leaves a massive open gap for their midfield. And that's where Valverde really ran the game today, because he just had so much free space. And look, Bernardo Silva again. I love him. He's in there. But he just can't go at the speed he used to in that game. He can see games out, but he can't. You can't ask him to mark an entire midfield out of a game. And with with Rodri still at 50-60%, you need structure. And at the minute, he's just sacked all structure off and went for the kill, and has ended up shooting himself in the foot basically.
Yeah, speaking on Bernardo, he's definitely not a 10, which he was playing tonight. He's an 8 next to Rodri. Both work defensively with each other. And even if you want to give Nico Gonzalez a bit of time, we saw how good he was at the weekend. Why is he not playing? Why is he not? I'd be fuming if I was him as well. The January signings that came in last year, Marmoush not getting the minutes, Gonzalez not getting the minutes, Kuchinov, who's probably our 4th choice centre-back at the minute, maybe 3rd, behind Diaz and Guehi. He's the one getting the most minutes. It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I mean, you make the point about Gonzalez. I mean, this is another thing about tonight that I really looked at. I thought when I heard that it was Reinders coming on for Savinho, you were looking for stability in that midfield. Maybe Reinders is a bit more attacking, but you really lacked physicality in there tonight. Rodri was drowning, and so he's going to need a bit of help. He's not Rodri of a few years ago, who probably would have locked that midfield up tonight. Fair enough. But he's not. So this is where you're really going to need, your Nico Gonzalez to come in, and he has done that. And this is the thing, you can't. I'll go back to last year's January signings, as you said. You can't look at them and say they're not doing anything to be able to come in. At the minute, he's playing the players that that you look at and think, what exactly is he doing to deserve starting?
Yeah.
I mean, Doku was always going to start. He's coming back. If it was a Bayern Munich away, he probably wouldn't have started. But with his record against Trent, etc., that was a fair enough example. But couldn't Marmoush have gone into that 10 as well? We say he had 3 very good options that have played 10 and played Champions League football with experience. You had Cherky, Foden, and Marmoush, who could easily just stabilise that midfield. Being able to track back, etc. And know the role well, but instead he chose to rotate Bernardo and Semenyo. And Semenyo, I don't think has ever played 10 in his life. Definitely didn't look him, and it's not his fault. The manager has completely screwed us tonight, and that is the final.
Yeah, looking back at the game, we had one chance really in the second half where Nico O'Reilly nicked it off. I think it was Thiago Pichar, a youngster for Madrid who started tonight. That shows the place they're in at the minute. They're having to play the academy kids. You said it in the preview. When have Madrid ever had to play kids from the academy? That's how much of a bad place they're in at the minute. O'Reilly pounced on a loose ball in the box, but Courtois stuck out a leg for a ridiculous save, to be honest. When you looks out, isn't it, Dan?
You can't always say the luck, though, because I think, I also think, yes, that, we did get unlucky with that chance. But if that's the chance you create, we've got serious problems. And this doesn't just run tonight. This runs further deeper. And I think tonight could be the snowball that will end up leading. Let's just be very clear right now. This time next week, Wednesday evening next week, our season could be over. All it takes here is to not come back against Madrid, which I don't think we will, and a draw at West Ham, which I think is definitely a thing that could happen. A draw or a loss at West Ham or something like that, and that could be a season over. So tonight has been really damaging in my eyes. I think that is really going to scupper things. The problems they're just the same problems over and over and over and over and over again, and they're doing nothing about it. There's no sort of change. There's no sort of anything. I look back at, or I thought back, to where we were in December when we played there. We were actually in very good form there. We actually looked, and we were an exciting team to watch play. At the minute, we are boring to watch. We are really dull, and it's just very slow. There's no urgency in any attacks or anything like that. There's no venom in anything. Whereas there, you had a few attackers firing. We were on good form, and you went there and they gave us a game. A watchable game. Whereas tonight, did we actually trouble them? Did we run at them at all? Really? You can't rely on Doku because, let's be honest, if Haaland's not a threat, they can put another man on Doku who is a threat and mark him out the match, which they did. They had 3 players in constantly.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but even the very best would struggle with that. Very best of all time would struggle with that.
Yeah.
So I don't see. I think you've really got to look towards what are they doing on the training ground at this point. Is Pep watching these games and he's sat there thinking, brilliant, we're fine here? Did he watch that 2-2 against Forest and think this isn't a wake-up call? We're doing okay here. Forest are fantastic. And this is the thing, nothing's changed from it. It's not changing. And I don't think it will change.
Briefly looking back at that Forest game, of course, we needed a goal in that one. 2-2. I think Anderson scored with 15-20 minutes left. Marmouth just sat on the bench. He even went down the tunnel at one point and he brings on Savinho, who ended up missing an open goal. So that tells you everything you need to know about that one. Looking back at this game, as we've said, Real limited City tonight. It's as simple as that. Looking at the stats, 60-40% possession in City's favour. An XG of 2.59 for Real Madrid tonight. 0.56 for City. Real created 3 big chances. City had 1. City were more accurate with the passes, 90% to 86. And we had 10 corners tonight and didn't do anything from any of them. Real Madrid had 1. Simple as that. Hugely disappointing, as you've said. Guardiola selected an attacking side, but we were done by Madrid's transitions through a very open midfield. Do you think Guardiola smelt blood tonight with that Madrid team?
Of course he did. Come on, that Madrid team isn't very good. I know what we're just seeing, but that tonight isn't them being good. We've made them look good tonight.
Yeah.
So let's just be very careful with what anybody says about this Madrid team. Look, and we'll see it. In the next round, Bayern will go there, and they if that was Bayern tonight, they probably would have won that 4-0. I'm sorry, but this is the difference between teams that are ruthless and teams that prioritise possession and ball retention over actual goals. This is the thing. You look at the stats. Yes, brilliant. We've had more possession. What did we do with it? Somebody tell me, because I don't recall us doing much apart from try to look busy and pass the ball around. Try and go sideways. Give it to Doku. Doku's getting marked out of the game. So then we give it to Savinho. Savinho just, I'm convinced he's not. I'm convinced he's someone's cousin. Like how JJ Okocha, his cousin, Southampton. I'm convinced he's rang Tixi up and said, I'm Ronaldinho's cousin. Because he is not a footballer and he's not Brazilian. And I don't want to, I do want to dig into him actually, because at this point he's not City standard. And there's so many players in this team.
There's at
so
least
many players
3.
there, and you can list a few of them off. That obviously a few of them weren't playing tonight, but on that pitch tonight that played, Reinders is not City standard. Savinho is not City standard. You move into. I mean, we're going to start questioning players like Bernardo Silva soon, which I think his contract's up. Maybe before we actually get to answer that, question that whether he get there, he'll probably be gone. But there's so many players tonight that could quite easily gone, and they are a disgrace to the Pep era, should I say, at the club. Because I think you go back to those 18, 19 Centurion, the Centurions, the treble winners. You're telling me that Savinho would be getting a sniff around that team.
Oh,
You're telling me that
not a
Reinders would be getting a
chance.
sniff.
No way.
And it'd actually be like you wouldn't even get any under 21s at that period.
Yeah.
And at the minute there, who we're turning to be able to come back against Real Madrid, and yes, it's doable, but are we the City team that we used to be? No, and that's the sad reality that we're going to start looking at the Pep era, and we're going to start to really question it. I think that people have. Obviously, Pep will know when his time is here, but I think the best quote I've seen today that somebody's put is. You don't want him sacked. He never will be sacked. This will be his. But you're starting to really not dread the day he leaves as much as you used to. It is probably what you're looking at, because you're really starting to question not his integrity, not anything like that, but you're just really starting to question. Does he have it anymore? Does he have the oomph? Does he have the passion, the fight? The will to go and rebuild this team and go on another run of 2, 3, 4 years where you can go and dominate English football. And at the minute he's not learning from mistakes. You can go back to last season, and obviously we had the exact same result. It obviously has improved since last season. I think anything's an improvement on that. But still, games like this, you're still getting turned over. Last year was acceptable because we were terrible and we had injuries, etc. You can always account for one of those years. 2 years, though, you can't. He's had 2, 3 transfer windows since that game last year to fix, and he's spent heavily. He's got the players he wanted.
Yeah.
Let's. You can't defend it forever, and I will defend him for now. But I think, at the end of the season, if we are still trophyless, questions will be asked by a lot more people than currently are now.
Yeah, my gut feeling right now is he won't be getting a new contract. That is, I think he'll be gone by the end of next season, definitely. This is Guardiola's joint heaviest first leg defeat in a Champions League knockout tie, which matches 3-0 losses to Barcelona in the 2015 semis for Bayern Munich and the 2018 quarter-final against Liverpool. We had chances which could give us slight hope for the return leg at the Etihad. There is very little hope, though, to be honest. But overturning will require one of the greatest comebacks of Pep's reign. Donnarumma was defiant pitch side as he said to Joe Hart, "Let's go, it's not over." What's your thoughts on going into that second leg next week? It's very slim, and the chance of going through.
Well, look, 4-0, probably wouldn't have even bothered turning up. 3-0, you've obviously got certain players in that dressing room. This is my worry with the team at the minute, is you'll have certain players in that dressing room that will believe. Donnarumma straight away, he's buzzing, he's ready to go again. But I think there's certain players that I'm going to question the mentality. I know they've only been here a bit, but players like Reinders, I just don't think he has the dog in him to be able to go and to overturn this. And the same players are getting dug out here, and I know that.
I know.
But at the same time, I can't question Bernardo Silva's mentality. I can't question Rodri's mentality.
Yeah.
I will question Haaland's mentality now, because he genuinely looks like he's turned up from the pub with the City fans. He looked like he'd been on the piss all day in Madrid, and turned up and played up front today. But I think the only hope that we have is we need to really get the atmosphere up in that first 10 minutes. And if we can get a goal in that first 10 minutes, I think we should be. Well, I'm not going to say we should be able to do it, but we'll really be in, and we'll be more within a chance there. You get one goal, you get another. All of a sudden, there's a goal in it, and then you can bounce from there. But no, I'm going to really go on the assumption that we're probably out now. I don't think they will, and obviously I don't think Pep will. Maybe he will, I don't know, because I do think Pep is eyeing up these next few weeks and looking at a certain competition that he can sacrifice. Potentially the Champions League is that now, and that's something that we don't want to see, because let's be honest, the FA Cup's brilliant, but do you really want to be ending this, what could have been this season? Would you rather a Champions League or an FA Cup? And I think
the answer's obvious for that, really, isn't it?
Exactly, and this is the worrying thing. If we are going to prioritise another FA Cup, which isn't guaranteed because Pep's recent record in FA Cup finals is absolutely terrible. He's almost sacrificed several games for some reason. Against United, against Palace, you can't exactly. He'll never be forgiven for those. I don't think. There's certain games that you just can't lose, and they are it. That performance against Palace, again, shocking last year. So that doesn't fill me with much confidence going into an FA Cup final against whoever it is. It could be Port Vale at this point, and I still probably wouldn't feel confident.
No.
But my prediction would be Arsenal, and I really don't have a good feeling about playing them now at Wembley anyway. We'll see. That's my current thoughts of the second leg. I think that could really be the game that he's now decided to sacrifice and get out of the way and move on to the other competitions. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Pep, he said at full time we arrived to the goal with good ideas, didn't defend well for the first goal, and after the amount of times we arrived to the byline, I have the feeling it was a good game, not what the result dictates, was his words. Another thing he said is 3-0 is better than 4-0. Tough result, we can't deny it, were his words. There's some questionable comments there again, isn't there?
Everything is questionable about that. He hasn't said one correct thing there at all. I'd much rather him come out and own it. I'd rather him come out and say, yes, we were terrible, and try and give the fans a bit of hope for the second leg and say, yes, we will work on this, we'll improve this. Not go on and talk about how well we played when we lost 3-0 and it should have been 4. And let's, Donnarumma made a mistake in that first half and we'll get absolutely crucified by a few. However, if it wasn't for Donnarumma, you wouldn't be turning up next week. There'd be no point. Tie would be done.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he's talking about, and I know managers like to do this. The second that everything's gone sideways, and after a game, and they all come out and say, "Oh, we played a brilliant game. The game plan went perfectly." It just quite clearly wasn't. It really wasn't a game that went well. Everything about that, from our game plan to our effort to our tactics, it all went wrong. It all went wrong, and I think it's how many more times are we going to have to sit here as City fans and say, how lucky are we? We've won all this, but then every single year without fail in Europe, Pep has his pants pulled down by Madrid. Doesn't matter how good Madrid are. How many times are the fans going to pay a decent whack of money to go over to Madrid every year in hope and somehow lose like that?
Yeah.
It's not acceptable. It's to the point where, yes, we've had such a brilliant 10 years of winning leagues and stuff like that, but how many Champions League could we have won if Pep didn't overthink games against Real Madrid And that again will probably stain his reputation with a few fans that I already know it does. I just think there's only so many more defeats like that we can take, and we've had a fair few recently, especially for fans that are paying so much money to go. And look, these fans are used to losing, going to Main Road in League One and whatnot. But that was to Stockport and Barnsley, where you can jump on a train for 20 quid. This is paying almost £1,000 every time you're going away. To watch us lose, fans aren't going to do it. And I think, that was seen in the away allocation that we took. We didn't take that many. I think, we handed a fair few tickets back. It's really, really deflating. I think everything about that is really deflating.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, then, we will look at what Bernardo Silva had to say before briefly looking at both teams' games at the weekend. Before we look at what Bernardo Silva had to say, a slight record for Antoine Semenyo tonight. He became just the second player to ever play non-league, all 4 professional divisions in England, and now the Champions League with his Champions League debut tonight after stints at Bristol City, Bath City, Newport, Sunderland, Bournemouth, and now City. Looking at Bernardo's comments, he said, after conceding the first, we lost control completely. It's a tough stadium. Today was a learning game for the whole team. Would you agree with that?
Parts of it, yeah. Look, yes, it's a tough stadium, and yes, we did lose all control the second they scored, which is pathetic, by the way. But again, how can this be a learning curve, Bernardo? You've played in that stadium about 25 times in the last 5 years. How are you still learning things? Like, I get the new lads will learn things, but this is where you, Rodri, Phil, Erling, you've all had massive, massive games. Even, you look at the bench, you've got Stones and Arcade on the bench. They've been there, they've done it in seasons that, we've got past them. Where are they? This is why, we can't talk about learning. We can't talk about experiences because you've got all that at the club. You've got a manager that has, won all that. He's won there. He's done all this. He's done all that. You can't talk about experiences because you've got plenty available. You've got where the lad's not talking in the dressing room before. They're not. Is Stones not sat there giving Semenyo advice? Even players like Reinders. You can't talk about things like this because he came from AC Milan. I'm pretty sure they won there the last time they went, and Reinders was man of the match.
Yeah.
So what are we learning from this? We've already got the tools, we've got the learning, and we still look shell shocked for some bizarre reason, and I can't quite understand it.
No, looking at Real Madrid, then it looks like the Champions League fires them up because they've been mediocre for weeks. Valverde brought applause from all 4 sides of the stadium, including Mbappe and Bellingham watching on from the stands, as the former Liverpool man Trent Alexander-Arnold had a tough start but grew into the game and also earned a warm ovation when he was subbed off. Next up then, both teams play on Saturday at 8 o'clock as they're similar games, to be honest. Real Madrid host Elche in La Liga, who are currently 17th, as we travel to West Ham, who they're either 17th or 18th at the minute. I think they might be 18th, actually. But this game won't exactly fill us with confidence for Saturday, will it?
No, and as I've previously stated, I think we are we could effectively end the season, because we've done our stupid thing already this season, where we think that we are the dog's bollocks, if you will, and walking around, thinking that we'll be able to manage games against Forest, Brighton, Chelsea, etc. We've made all these mistakes, and we're now on our last lifeline. If we even draw a game, that is title done. So. And I think, as I said as well, I think if we go into this game thinking that we're gonna do anything that's it could really derail them that tonight, and I think it did. I think it could with a few of them. So that's the worrying thing for me. I think we could turn up at West Ham and easily drop points. Easily, because I think if West Ham go 1-0 up, which I think they could do if the crowd get behind them, then I think some of our players will give up. They'll down tools straight away. There's no fight in that team anymore. I don't see it. I think Rodri and Bernardo have tried their best in previous games to try and get this team up, but they just don't look up for it. Players like Haaland, Foden, they've got the fat paychecks now. They've got a massive contract, and that's, I think, where it's all gone wrong. They're massive. They're set now. They don't even have to touch the grass, and they've earned nearly £1 million. So, why would they? It's like trying to motivate a millionaire that's already won everything to try and, why would they run again? They've done everything he wants, and you've seen that in, Haaland especially. He's put more effort into his YouTube at the minute than he has actually playing football. And the last time I checked, the reason he's, on 980 grand a week or whatever it is, isn't YouTube. I think there's certain things. I think he's took the piss at the minute. I think Foden, I don't understand what's happened with him, but he really, really needs to sort of get in now. Tonight should have been the night he should be walking into that crowd thinking, now's my time. And I know he didn't play, but then again, why would he play? He bottled it against Salford. He bottled his opportunity against Salford. What opportunity did he think he was going to get at the Bernabeu? This is the issue. These players that we were told 5 years ago that would be coming in, that would win us several games. I just don't see where the fight is anymore. They've done everything, and this is probably where you're going to sort of need a refresh for everyone. They need a kick up the arse basically, and I don't think tonight will give it him, because I just can't see anything changing. I can't see mentality changing. I can't see tactics changing. I just don't have any hope for the rest of the season.
No. West Ham are also unbeaten in 5 at home as well. So, ain't going to be the easiest game in the world. So that's it for this one. Real Madrid take a commanding 3-0 lead into the second leg. Do you think City can pull off a miracle at the Etihad? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and what was your thoughts on Valverde's performance as well. Thank you all so much for watching. If you're new around here, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at MCFC Hibs, of course, now known as X, with all the links needed in the description. And until next time, take care. Cheers, guys.